The RCMP and Canadian Forces confirm new information about a Canadian Forces member who allegedly acted as a recruiter for a hate group. Now, we first told you about this reservist yesterday at this time. Now, the RCMP say weapons have been seized from his home, and the Canadian military is investigating his ties to a group which experts say is so extreme they characterize it as a neo-Nazi death cult. Karen Pauls has the very latest.
It was a warm summer evening when reporter Ryan Thorpe came to this park, undercover, posing as a white nationalist.
I was a bit scared going into it.
This was the final step in the process of joining the base, which put up posters around Winnipeg hoping to recruit members for a 2 to 3 man paramilitary cell.
They believe a race war is on the horizon, and they welcome it. They want it to get here.
Thorpe says the group's recruiter was 26-year-old Patrick Matthews. The military has confirmed Master Corporal Matthews is an active reserve member in the 38 Canadian Brigade Group. He has some explosives training, but they gave this assurance.
Master Corporal Matthews has no ability to obtain explosives through the military, and he has no access to weapons.
Last November, an internal report identified 53 Canadian Forces members belonging to hate groups or promoting extremist views. A review of racism in the military is now underway.
We don't want anybody in uniform with that type of behavior festering in the Canadian Armed Forces.
That's not good enough for this anti-hate activist.
These neo-Nazis and white supremacists are walking into our churches, our synagogues, our mosques, and they are murdering us. And now we hear that they are actually getting training in the Canadian military.
Monday night, in this video circulating on social media, the RCMP were seen surrounding Matthews' home. Police seized firearms, but say no one is in custody.
But still no comment.
Matthews was home today, but he refused to speak to us.
These groups are the most extreme, radical fringes of the extreme right.
From his brief vantage point inside the group, Ryan Thorpe says homegrown hate is a very real threat across Canada.
They welcome, these mass shootings, and they want high casualties.
Thorpe hopes his story exposes this dark underworld, and he hopes the authorities take action. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Let's understand this a little bit better with the expertise of someone who studies the growth of right-wing extremism. David Hofman, an assistant professor of sociology at the University of New Brunswick. My guest from Fredericton this morning. Professor Hofman, welcome to you.
Hi.
We've been learning as a result of covering this that this reservist is alleged to be recruiting for a group called The Base, and people describing it characterize it as a neo-Nazi death cult. It is at the far right of the far right. Can you help us understand a little bit more? What's your knowledge of The Base?
The Base is an international far-right extremist group, American ties, paramilitary background. Essentially a product of post-2016 far-right extremism in Canada. In an increasingly globalized world, we're getting more and more of these American ideas finding their way into Canada, and the Base is a product of this.
You mentioned paramilitary foundation, and is that where the nexus comes in with military forces?
It's more... I guess the best way to explain it is a bunch of people who like to pretend soldier. It's not like the military is actively recruiting these folks. It's more like these people like the Base are interested in the culture of the military, the guns, the freedom, the expertise. That's one of the modus operandi of the Base is to obtain some sort of military expertise, and they encourage their members to go out and join the military as well. It's not like the Canadian military is actively looking for these people.
Right.
It's that these people want to gain certain types of expertise, and they want to get, a sort of military cool amongst their fellow members. It's a form of social capital. It's a form of social a credo amongst these far-right groups.
Okay, so into the military, get that training, and then take it out for their far-right associates. It's disquieting not just to be talking about the base, but a number of far-right groups in existence in our country these days. And we've been quoting a report that the forces themselves published last November, in which they found 53 members of the Canadian Armed Forces have participated in hate groups. Help us understand that figure and just how prevalent you consider far-right extremists to be within the Canadian military.
That number is pretty much, if you boil it down to and compare it to far-right involvement in the rest of the Canadian population, it's pretty much equal. It's not more, it's not less. It's representative of Canadian far-right extremist ideology and participation as a whole. So it's not exceptional. The problem is, again, the connection with the military, the training involved, and the types of crossing our fingers it doesn't happen, the types of events that might occur amongst the fringe of the fringe of the fringe who might participate in the military, gain the expertise, and then use it to I mean, in their minds, ignite a race war or attack a minority group.
And if it's not a disproportionate figure within the military, is the incidence, based on your information, is it growing? Are you seeing more of this type of right-wing extremism activity within the military?
Within Canada as a whole. Within the military, it's hard as an outsider. I'm not a member of the military. I'm not privy to the deep and I guess detailed information about it. But what we're seeing, what I suspect is happening, what we're seeing with the military is more of a reflection of what's happening in Canada as a whole. And the important date, I guess, is post-2016. What we're really seeing here in Canada is an explosion of right-wing groups after 2016. It's not just Canadian, actually. It's a global phenomenon happening in Europe, happening in North America, South America, the United States. We're not immune to these types of things, and it's happening here in Canada. There's a growth of these types of movements here, which then translates to a growth in recruitment, which then translates to a growth in interest in these new recruits in the military and the skills it might offer.
Okay. And you mentioned the word culture before, but can you elaborate on that at all? What might there be in the hierarchical or whatever aspect of the military culture that is an attractive, fertile ground for this kind of activity?
What this traces back to is really American far-right extremism. What we're seeing with groups like the base, like the militia movement, 3%ers, if your viewers have heard of them before, an alarming paramilitary group, mainly active out west, but pretty much with chapters in the rest of Canada. What we're seeing here is American ideas have trickled their way through the internet, through globalization, into Canada, which for people who are aware of the American paramilitary and militia culture, there's always been this type of desire to connect with, be like, and learn from the military. So it's part of these groups' culture to here, even transplanted here in Canada, to want to connect with and be seen as someone who is operationally sound, who can bring the tactics of the military, who can bring firearm expertise into a group and teach these people. So it's not something necessarily about the military or the Canadian military. It's more like people going. It's a one-way street. The Canadian military by no means wants these people, and we've seen Minister Sajan, we've seen spokespeople for the military denounce these types of ideas and saying they have no place in the Canadian military. Again, it's more the far-righters want to go to the military. So again, it's not anything about the military culture itself.
And as you say, there have been strong words to denounce this type of activity from the defense minister and from other officials within the forces. But I'm wondering, as I listen to you, it's pretty chilling, the reality that you are portraying for us this morning. Is it your sense that the Canadian Armed Forces and military leaders in this country, politicians, are taking this seriously enough, that are really trying to get to the root of the problem, find these people within the ranks of the military, do something about the increase in right-wing extremism within the Canadian forces?
I think so. Actually, I know so. I think what's being done is an important first step. at the danger of sounding biased or self-interested, I think a lot more academic and outside research like this needs to be done, and some is being done. But there's always the chance and always the fear that someone will slip under the radar, and it only takes one. Even though there's I mean, compared to the rest of the population of Canada, these people are these far-right extremists are the vast minority. All it takes is one to get another Quebec mosque shooting or something, another terrible event akin to that. And the sobering reality is it's I don't want to say impossible, but it's incredibly difficult to completely stamp out these types of ideas. I mean, we look at history, it's almost impossible to crush an ideology. And this is what this is. It's an ideology. So I think the government's taking the right steps, but it's not foolproof, and a lot more needs to be done.
And I know you're one of the researchers receiving federal funds to do more study of this, to help us understand the rise of this in our country, and we'll doubtless be speaking on it again. But I thank you for the time this morning, Professor Hofman. Very much appreciated from Fredericton today.
Pleasure.